Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. It's race week in Suzuka, and not just any race week, the first of a triple header. Japan, Bahrain, Jeddah will give us a serious indication as to the way this championship will go, especially for Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Big talks over the last few days as to if this car does not deliver this season for Max, the RB21, it could be his final racing car that he drives at Red Bull. Rumours about Mercedes have definitely gathered steam over the last few days, and now Red Bull have given further indication that this Yuki Tsunoda change is made with the main intention to try and keep Max happy in this team, even though for now he's not especially happy with the decision. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. This of course is the graphic that F1 put out for the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend, and this is the Haas car. Now okay, worth keeping in mind, all of the graphics they come out with have plenty of cherry blossom on the screen itself, so the way the actual livery looks is maybe a little bit going to be different, but loads of special liveries this weekend. I think even Sauber might be doing one, potentially more to come too. Obviously, Red Bull have got their white bull, we'll discuss that in a second. What they're going to therefore do with the racing bull as a result, because there's also a Honda partnership there. Haas have partnered with Toyota. This is their first Japanese Grand Prix, I think, since that was all confirmed. And there is a general feeling that if Toyota want to come back into Formula 1 on a more full-time basis, they may just take over Haas. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it's definitely been thrown around as a possibility. The fact that Honda are now back in F1 properly, I mean, they left, they came back again, partnering with Aston Martin, and potentially Toyota may decide, okay, we want to come back full-time, and if they were to do that, they would probably take over the Haas team. For now, it's Toyota Gazoo Racing Haas, and as a result of this partnership, they've cooked up a pretty sensational livery, I'm not going to lie. This is the Cherry Blossom Haas. Now, of course, you know, from this angle, it maybe doesn't look quite as spectacular, but there are certainly some spectacular angles of it, and I think they've done a brilliant job of this livery design, actually. I thought it was kind of funny, because Red Bull apparently were going to make a pink bull, as in probably cherry blossom style, but then they were like, oh, the pink paint is a bit too heavy or something, so they decided not to do so. Again, it's something which maybe is there to try and please Verstappen. I guess in an ideal world, the red for MoneyGram and for Haas would also be pink, and then it would be a cleaner kind of pink black and white, but still, it's okay. I think it's pretty sexy, to be honest. I think they've done a pretty damn good job with it, and I'm excited to see some of these on track. I do think sometimes they go a bit far with the special liveries. It's like, well, you know, come on, not every team should be able to do, well, should be doing a special livery. For some reason, the drivers these days end up having 5, 6 or more helmets a year because they've got special helmets every other week. It doesn't quite hit the same when the one-off liveries aren't actually that one-off. But this, if there's one to do, this has got to be it. I mean, yeah, people are calling it the Sakura Haas and all this. We've got the pink on the Haas name. We've got the pink on the side pods. It's a stunning looking thing. Is it going to be any good? Like, honestly, who knows? Because Australia was a shambles for Haas. They were so bad. Like, way worse than I thought they'd be. Way worse than, frankly, they thought they would be. But then they turned up to China and they were banging, right? Both of those guys had a great drive. Behrman was probably driver of the day, many would say, although Kimi Antonelli got it for some reason. The only reason why Kimi Antonelli could have ever deserved it is the fact that his car did have floor damage. So you guys know the first lap when Hamilton and Leclerc came together, Leclerc lost his end plate on the front wing. That end plate went under Antonelli's car and damaged the floor. That's why he was off the pace of Russell during the Grand Prix. They say it was costing him 3/10 a lap or something like that. And of course, also if it's, okay, costing you performance, but also the car is sliding a bit more, you lose more temperature of the tyres. So with that in mind, maybe Antonelli drove that day, fair enough, but I still don't really understand how that happened last weekend. Speaking of a white livery, though, on a car in Japan, we are going to get one on the Red Bull. They've teased this heavily. They came up with this today as well, which is, well, the RB21 driving into the garage. Presumably they're going to paint that thing white, and we're going to see what it looks like in a couple of days. We do have some images, potentially first shots of what this is going to look like, and I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's a Red Bull with a white livery on. It's probably not rocket science, but you guys can see it here. Presumably this is the start of the bull at the back. I still really want to know how different it's going to be to the racing bull, right? I mean, this is another angle of the same thing, we think. Couple of other angles here of what the halo's looking like. You guys can see the Tag Heuer logo right about there. And it seems to be painted a pretty bright white, to be fair, but I mean, it's white. What do you expect it to be? So yeah, it's very interesting. This is another angle I think you guys might find a little bit interesting. But how different is it going to look to the Racing Bull, which of course on paper is going to look a little bit similar? I guess the comparison may be that on the Racing Bull, the bull at the back is red and then it goes into this yellow on the engine intake. Whereas on the images that we just saw, let's say you look back at this one, it, you know, kind of appears that, okay, here's the halo, this is the engine intake, here's the red bull, but there's no yellow piece. So, you know, maybe that's the differentiator. I don't know what they're going to do with the Racing Bull either, if they're going to make an interesting change here. The only thing that Red Bull have put out so far is this. So they say the RB21 Japan spec, and it's black. I mean, it's obviously not black, but they're covering it up for now. But yeah, I guess you guys can see what I mean, really, where you've got the Red Bull on the back, it says Red Bull, and then presumably a lot of this is going to be a similar colour, including this top piece of the engine intake. So yeah, time will tell what it looks like. Hopefully it's pretty damn nice. But of course, for Max Verstappen, what he really, you know, what he finds important is whether the car's any good or not. Time will only tell, of course, whether that proves to be true. But Tsunoda's cooking, by the way. He's back in the Red Bull for the first time since, well, forever, but technically when he tested the RB20 at Abu Dhabi last year, and reportedly was pretty impressive, but he did admit yesterday that when he said, oh yeah, the car really suits my style, he was just making a bit of a sales pitch to Red Bull. He even said that himself, because it doesn't matter now, they've put him in the car regardless. But he's launching like a merch line as well, so the timing couldn't be any better for Yuki, and we'll discuss Red Bull more in just a second. Firstly, Williams. They have been a big conversation point so far this year. I know that many are really excited for this kind of Williams redemption arc, as to be fair am I. You know, I do kind of miss, there's a bit of nostalgia with Williams towards the front of the grid, let's say. And obviously a legendary team, and it wasn't that long ago that they were at least semi-competitive, and then they completely fell off a cliff. But now they've got the investment, Doralton have come on board, James Vowles seems to be steering the ship in the right direction. For whatever reason, whenever Carlos Sainz joins a team, they always get better with time. That may be some degree of coincidence, but there may be a factor in play there. I saw a couple of comments about this, right? Because obviously last year, the entirety of last season, Williams scored 17 points. This year, they have already scored 17 points, and people were saying, wow, it's, you know, it's the Carlos Sainz effect. It was like, hang on, he's only scored one of those points. But there is certainly something to be said for a driver of Sainz's quality joining a team like Williams to show where he thinks they are and where he thinks they are potentially going. But Albon's been on fire so far this year. Sainz knows that he's got more performance to find himself, but the Williams, during testing, I believed was probably the 5th fastest car. And it does seem that way right now. They seem to be in a great position, better than the Alpine, better than the Aston, better than, you know, the Sauber, the Haas, and the Racing Bull potentially. I think there's some debate on that, because the Racing Bull has looked surprisingly competitive, it's got to be said, so far this year. But nonetheless, the Williams has been in the mix everywhere they've gone. It's kind of remarkable how they've gone from having a car that was an absolute one-trick pony with its straight line speed, and only circuits like Monza, maybe Baku, Las Vegas, they could be anywhere near competitive, to now having a car that maybe doesn't have the peaks of maybe some of its competitors, but it does have good performance all around the circuit, and certainly better than some of its rivals. And that's especially impressive from Williams, given that they're not really focusing on this year, right? We know that 2023's off-season going into 2024 was a complete shambles. James Vowles turned up and was like, hang on guys, you guys are tracking parts on Excel spreadsheets, this is a shambles. Puts in the new kind of management system. It compromises their winter heavily going into 2024, and, well, they compromised their season in 2024 by crashing the thing every week. The team and the engineers, the mechanics, I don't imagine we're happy with that. This year, that should happen on a lower frequency, with Sainz and Albon in the team, and, frankly, a more drivable car. But they're using the same chassis as last year. It's a modified chassis with some substantial aero changes, and the car is very impressive so far. Now, will Williams maintain that as the season goes on? There's a question on that, because, you know, will they switch focus to 2026 earlier than rivals? I think the answer is absolutely yes, because frankly, they already have. But I guess the point is, if you're Williams competitors, let's say you're Alpine, Aston Martin, a team in that kind of ballpark, Are you grinding hard to put more performance on this year's car when you really know that it's all about next year anyway? The teams that are likely to separate themselves from the pack further are the front runners, right? Because the front runners in the title fight, they're going to be the ones more than likely trying to add performance to the final day they can to try and win this year's championship. Williams, among others, will likely move on. So if Williams are where they are now, I would expect them probably to stay there, especially if they are the 5th fastest still by the summer break. Let's just use that as kind of a benchmark. I think they'll be in a really good spot for the rest of the year. But their focus is on 26. They're in the same boat as, Aston Martin. They want to take a substantial step forward, and they want to, in some respects, replicate what McLaren have achieved, taking that Mercedes engine, which could be a rocket ship next year, and being as competitive with it as they possibly can be. It would be crazy to think, though, if Williams actually do take a step forward, as maybe do Alpine, that Mercedes-powered cars could be, dominating next year's championship per rumours, with Mercedes, the Works team, McLaren, Williams, Alpine, all under Mercedes power. But they'll be hoping to put themselves in a pretty good position. I think Williams has done a commendable job to get themselves to this point, and hopefully the revival can continue into the future. These are the numbers, though, on the most recent 20 Grand Prix. So over the last 20 Grand Prix weekends, Verstappen has scored 339 points. His teammates, Perez, Lawson, and obviously will be Yuki from now onwards, have scored only 49. So it's a remarkable return. Of course, those 49 all from Sergio Perez. And now Yuki's in the car. How well's he going to do? I mean, nobody really knows. I've got a feeling that he's going to be better than many expect, but I'm not really sure if that's particularly well-founded, because it does seem like the car is particularly tricky to drive. But my feeling is that Tsunoda will do a better job of it than Lawson did, and the experience should work in his favour. But there's no doubt that he's getting thrown absolutely right into a pressure cooker here, and even admitted it himself. Honda's final race with Red Bull in Japan, his first ever, Grand Prix with Red Bull at Japan, his home Grand Prix, the opportunity to secure a podium, which very few Japanese drivers have ever achieved. Of course, famously, Kobayashi had one, it was 2012, wasn't it, in Suzuka, which was a mega moment. So whether, Yuki can replicate a similar force, but of course the point is, will Verstappen even be on the podium? And if Verstappen's not on the podium, it's very difficult to imagine that Yuki Tsunoda could be. But this has been one of Verstappen's and Red Bull's, to be fair, dominant tracks over the last few years. There is again talk about rain on the Sunday. The current forecast indicates that there is a likelihood of maybe 70% chance of rain on the Sunday, roughly 50% when the Grand Prix starts. If it does rain, it will probably be quite light. I don't think there's going to be all that much in it, right? I'll actually find some of the, the data here just for you guys right about now. So yeah, here you go. This is what I saw earlier that F1 Big Data came out with. So on the Sunday, it looks like there's a 70% chance of rain, but if it does rain, it's not going to rain much. So it's going to be cold, maybe a bit of rain, a bit of drizzle. Would it be enough for inters? Possibly, but it could get interesting is the point, but it's probably not going to be soaking wet. That's the data as it currently looks, but all can change over the next couple of days. The point is, it is going to be pretty cold, which may favour some teams over others, certainly given, I'm not really sure it's super affecting Mercedes anymore, but certainly last year they'd be thinking, wow, cold temperatures banging, that's going to suit our car. This year, the Mercedes seems a bit more compliant regardless of the circumstances, but Verstappen's future is in doubt to some degree. Helmut Marko made that very clear the other day when he outright said, if by the summer break Red Bull are not in a great position, performance clauses may well be activated by Max Verstappen, and there's a real feeling from inside and outside of the Red Bull camp that, especially without Adrian Newey, the chances of even having a car that's race winning capable is going to be a challenge. Now, look, the car is capable of race wins, certainly in the hands of Verstappen. I mean, they could have won in Australia had things have gone different. Of course, Piastri spun out, had the same thing happen to Lando. Could have been over. Verstappen could have won that Grand Prix, but of course, you might say extenuating circumstances, and obviously Verstappen did a solid job in China too, but he was quite a way off the two McLarens and even George Russell that race in the Mercedes. There is some concern that Red Bull will even get on top of this, and I think the triple header for them will be incredibly impactful for where they go from here, because they know that they're not bringing anything Red Bull massive until really Imola. That's the target for a big upgrade that I hope is going to take them a step forward. So they've got Japan, Bahrain and Saudi, 3 difficult races in a row where there's going to be a real thought from Red Bull about damage limitation. Verstappen will hope to come out of those final, these following 3 Grand Prix with not too much of a dissimilar advantage in the championship than he presently, obviously that he's presently going up against. It's currently an 8-point only deficit to Norris. If that gap widens substantially in the next 3 rounds, it makes his life substantially more challenging even as the season goes on. Of course, there's talk about Spain, the flexi wing stuff that also may well be relevant. But Marco has said a lot about this over the last few days, and he makes it increasingly clear. But what he mainly says in this article really is that his goal and Red Bull's goal is to win Max the 5th. He doesn't really talk about trying to reclaim the constructors because I think realistically Red Bull know that is not attainable. What they want to do, Red Bull, at all costs is keep hold of Max Verstappen, and whatever that means, they will try and deliver. And that seems to be the reason in some regard why they've kept on Yuki, despite the fact that it doesn't seem like he's especially happy, Max, with the decision to get rid of Lawson. He says, if we don't deliver for Max, all the top drivers have performance clauses in their contract. We have to make sure that he gets a car where he can win. There was a very constructive meeting last Thursday, Max with the engineers, and they discussed how to go forward to improve the car and make it more drivable, have a wider range of drivability. And all that went very positive. It's just 2 races. We're only 8 points behind. I like how he says we're only 8 points behind, as if he's talking about the constructors. They're quite a long way behind the constructors. But in the drivers, which is really what Red Bull are making it very clear they care about, the whole team is focused on achieving this 5th title in a row for Max. We didn't do it with Vettel and talked about the lap times not being too bad. The RB21 is not the fastest car, but nevertheless it's difficult to drive. Max can handle it, but not Liam at this stage. We are worried that his self-confidence is so damaged that he couldn't bring his normal performance. Yuki made a big step. He's in his 5th year, much stronger personality, changes management. He's far more mature, more confidence, did 2 very good races, but the strategy was terrible as always. But, this I think is the key section. On the other hand, we have 2 drivers for the Constructors Championship, but also to support Max strategy-wise. If you have 2 drivers in the top 5 or 8, it is easier to max a strategy that favours the number 1 driver. So the point is that they're telling Max is like, look, yeah, we got rid of Liam, and you probably don't think that we should have done because it feels a little bit to Max, I'm sure, like Red Bull are once again saying, oh, well, no, it's just the driver, it's not about the car. And clearly it's about the car to some degree. And even Marco is saying there, well, yeah, if Yuki gets, top 5, top 8, that's going to help Max strategically, which sure, yes, it would. Can Yuki get there on talent? Absolutely. But is it going to work with this car? Who knows? Because, again, Red Bull are making the assumption that, oh yeah, we'll just put Yuki in for Liam and the car's going to be in the top 8, no problem at all, scoring consistent points, helping Max strategically. Is that actually true? I don't know. I'd like it to be. I think that, I'd like to see Yuki do well, but I'm not so sure that we can be 100% convinced by that. So that's, I think, what is making Max a little bit frustrated. Is that Max, as Marco even says, Max argued the car is very difficult to drive, and if the car was better, Lawson's performance would improve, which I'm sure is true, and therefore Max is saying, look guys, let's focus on the car here, not the driver. The team is saying, no, we're going to change the driver to help support you, Max, but of course Max doesn't necessarily see it like that. He says, well, the driver would be better able to support me if you improve the car. So there's a bit of a, dichotomy here between the way that Verstappen feels about the situation and what Red Bull are saying. I think both parties on some regards may be correct, but time will show us what the truth is, and if Yuki can't deliver in this Red Bull, Max is going to get especially frustrated because he's being told by the team, yeah, we're putting Yuki in so he can perform better and he can help you out strategically by being up there in the fight. So, the undercut, the overcut becomes a possibility. You're not fighting 2v1 against the McLarens every single Grand Prix. But if Yuki has a difficult debut, there's going to be increasingly challenging conversations for Red Bull to have. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Just one final note on Max Verstappen. This was his old private jet. You guys know that he got a bigger version with a few more windows in it that can travel a bit further, so he can go presumably straight from Milton Keynes out to Brazil, maybe in a single flight. Who knows? But that's what he did this year. His former 900 LX Falcon is now, it's been purchased as a charter airplane. So if you guys want to fly on it, and have a charter, hit the DMs. We'll make something happen. But yeah, you can fly on Max's jet if you just charter a flight, which obviously is not especially cheap, but it is doable, I think is the point. So yeah, not really relevant to many of us, but I thought that some of you guys might find that a little bit interesting. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Seems like Hamilton is going to cook up as well another Tokyo Drift montage back in Japan again. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.